Hello and welcome to Lamplighter. Today is June 8. Before we continue in our discussion of the daily Bible reading today, I do want to make one quick correction to something that I said yesterday in the video for yesterday's daily Bible reading. As we were reading about and talking about Elijah and his relationship with this Shunammite woman, we talked about the Shunammite woman's son dying and how she sent a messenger immediately to Elisha. Well, that's incorrect. The woman went herself. She didn't send a messenger. She immediately went to Elisha herself. As a matter of fact, she wasn't even satisfied just to see Gehazi, Elisha's servant. She refused to leave until Elisha would come back with her and deal with the passing of her son. So I wanted to correct that slight misstatement that was made in yesterday's video before we move further today. I want to thank you for being with me today as we continue in our daily Bible reading. And today we continue to read about the great wonders of God. Remember, the story is about God. You may have noticed the heading at the top of today's reading is Miracles and Massacres. That gives us a hint of some of the things that are coming. God is going to continue to make his presence known in miraculous ways. And what's amazing about today's reading is this is during the time of the divided kingdom. I mentioned to you before that all of the kings in the north in Israel are wicked. Some of the kings in the south in Judah are wicked. And even during the times of Israel's and Judah's worst days, God is still refusing to forsake his people. Remember, God has always promised, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. And you really see that borne out in today's reading. God continues to work wonders among his people, but even when he continues to make his presence dramatically seen, he continues to be largely ignored, for the most part, by his people. So as we pick up today's reading, we're in Judah, in the southern tribes, where Jehoram becomes co-regent again, or a fellow king with his father Jehoshaphat. We're told that Jehoram is 32 years old when he becomes king, and he rules for 8 years, and he's ruling alongside his father Jehoshaphat. We've seen that Jehoshaphat has done some pretty good things himself, but unfortunately we'll see that Jehoram doesn't follow suit. Now, Jehoram, we're told, immediately kills his brothers. That sounds like a pretty rash act, doesn't it? But remember, there are a lot of kings back in this time of history that are so envious of others and so protective of their kingship that they will do whatever it takes to solidify their position as king, even if it means wiping out all the competition, which would be Jehoram's own brothers. And that's exactly what he does. He kills his own family members. And that will not be forgotten, by the way, as we'll see later in today's reading. Now, as we read on, we're going to see that Moab, the nation of Moab, who has always been an enemy of God's people, is threatening war against the king of Israel. The king of Israel calls out to the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, and asks him to join him in the fight against Moab. And so the king of Judah decides to do just that. They're marching together through the desert of Edom, and the king of Edom joins them as well. So we have the king of Israel, the king of Edom, and the king of Judah that are going to fight against Moab. But while they're marching around, they run out of water, and they're not sure what to do. They feel like they're on a mission from God, Judah's God, that is. But still, they run out of water and they begin to panic a little bit. They say, what should we do? And they begin to be reminded that Elisha, a prophet of God, is nearby. So they go and consult Elisha. Elisha makes it very clear that if it had just been the king of Israel that came to him, he would have nothing to do with him because he's wicked. He's been opposed to God. But since the king of Jehoshaphat is also there, out of respect for him, Elisha speaks on behalf of God to these three kings, and he tells them that God's message is to make ditches in the valley that is between them and Moab. And so they do so. And when they get up in the morning, those ditches are miraculously filled with the water they need for their troops and for their animals. Now, here's what's fascinating. They see this water being provided miraculously, and of course, they take advantage of it. But Moab, on the other side of the valley, when they get up in the morning and see the sun's reflection off that water, it appears to them to be red. They think it's not water, they think it's blood. They assume that the Israelite army has turned on itself and destroyed one another, so they march eagerly and without caution into the valley to face the Israelites, thinking they're only going to get plunder. In reality, they walk right into the camp of their opponent and they are easily defeated. Israel defeats Moab by the hand of God. After this unusual battle, we read about the death of Jehoshaphat, and then because Jehoshaphat has died, Jehoram is now a king all by himself. But we're told about Jehoram's character that he follows in the ways of Ahab. Now, this is the king of Judah in the south, but we're told that he follows in the ways of Ahab, which was the most wicked king of Israel in the north. But we're also told this little tidbit. Jehoram is married to one of the daughters of Ahab. So now maybe we can understand why Jehoram himself becomes so wicked. Jehoram, while he's king, receives a mysterious letter from Elijah. Now, how odd is this? You remember that Elijah has already been taken up in a whirlwind to heaven, and nothing has been seen nor heard of Elijah since. And all of a sudden, Jehoram receives this letter from the hand of Elijah. And the letter says this is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat or of Asa, king of Judah, but you've walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. And you have led Judah and the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, just as the house of Ahab did. You've also murdered your own brothers, members of your father's house, men who are better than you. So now the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will be very ill with a lingering disease of the bowels until the disease causes your bowels to come out. And so then we're told that foreign armies are going to invade. The Lord aroused against Jehoram the hostility of the Philistines and of the Arabs who lived near the Cushites. They attacked Judah, invaded it, and carried off all the goods in the king's palace, together with his sons and wives. Not a son was left to him, except Ahaziah the youngest, exactly as God had predicted. Then we read that in the time of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king, and Libnah revolted at the same time because Jehoram had forsaken the Lord, the God of his fathers. All of a sudden, Jehoram's world is caving in, crushing down around him because he fails to follow after God. Here's that familiar pattern again. Do what God says, you'll be blessed. Fail to follow God's commands, and you'll be cursed and destroyed. And that, unfortunately, is what happens to Jehoram. The reminder through all of this is the story is not about any of the kings. It's about the God who still refuses to forsake his people. It's about a God who continues to love and provide for his people, not only then, but even today. Isn't it great to be a lamplighter? His word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. I hope you have a blessed day.